help answer those questions. We've reached Raywat Deonandan. He's an epidemiologist and associate professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Ottawa. Good afternoon, Raywat.
Good afternoon.
How do you feel about stage 3 looming on the horizon?
I feel pretty good about it, and that's very atypical for me. Usually I'm fairly conservative about these sort of things, but I really like what I've been seeing in the data stream these last few days. The numbers that I look at, there are three of them in particular. One is the new cases per day, which is what most people look at, and in Ontario we've been holding at about 150, 160, 165 every day for the last few days. And then there's the positivity rate. That's the percentage of tests that we do that come back positive. Today it's 0.8%. My goal is somewhere between 1% and 2%, so that's even below what I think is appropriate. And then the big one is the reproduction number. That's the average number of new cases that an old case produces. We like that number to be less than 1, and it's been less than 1 for about 2 weeks in Ontario. So all in all, things are trending in the right direction, and I think we should look forward to stage 3 in the next little bit.
Now, the Ontario Health Minister, Christine Elliott, said this week that the province needs to look at the numbers for another week before giving the green light to go to stage 3. How confident are you that the virus is going to remain contained in most of Ontario? You cite those good numbers, but is that going to be enough as they are now, or do they even lower?
I understand why the desire to wait a couple of weeks, and I probably support that as well, because I'm a conservative guy by nature when it comes to data. Part of that is we have a couple of big holidays this weekend, and that might manifest in a spike in cases. So we have to wait a little bit and see if that happens. But what we're learning is that the outdoor nature of our current season really does seem to slow the spread of this disease. This disease hates outdoor activity, which is great because it means that the protests that were happening a few weeks ago did not result in huge surges in cases, and it means that we can enjoy the outdoor weather as it heats up. So that convinces me that, or it suggests to me that I should have some more confidence that the numbers will continue to trend in the right direction, at least while the weather is good. And we should take advantage of the good weather and maybe attempt to open things up while we can retreat to the outdoors. It'll be harder in the fall when the weather gets poor and we have to go back inside.
All right, but the provincial government's been vague on what exactly would change under stage 3. What are some of the restrictions you think we could start to loosen?
That's a great question, and it's really interesting that they have been so vague. I understand that it means that we're going to open up all businesses, which is great because health and economic health go together. We can't have people out of work for too much longer. We need to find ways to keep people active economically and psychologically. The one thing I'm concerned about is what do we do about children? So there isn't a whole lot of guidance yet, even scientifically, about whether this disease is manageable in a school environment. We're learning that children are just as likely to get it as are adults. They're just less likely to experience bad symptoms, but they can be strong asymptomatic carriers. So it's unclear what we'll do in the fall when they have to go back to school. It's also unclear what happens when parents have to go back to work as stage 3 happens and they need child care. So I'm worried about what we do there. I'm also a little concerned about how we define the size of the upper limit for gatherings. I understand that in stage 3, that will be increased somewhat from the 10 and 20 we have right now to something higher. And I don't know that there is a lot of science suggesting that there is an appropriate number. I do know that if we're indoors, we have to be really careful. So I would like to see that all indoor gatherings be strictly enforced in the sense that strong physical distancing protocols must be in place and a sense of strong hygiene as well. But I'm curious to see what the specifics will be when they're finally announced.
So it sounds like maybe you're saying schools might be a no-go even in stage 3 for you.
I'd be very surprised if schools opened in stage 3, mostly because the scientists can't agree on what's happening with schools yet. We need more time to figure this out. We need more time to study the disease transmission in young people and to figure out how to protect them. Mask wearing is probably not possible with children under 10. Definitely not possible with children under 4. So what do we do with those very young children who will be touching each other, who will be having bodily fluids sprayed against each other, who will be taking the disease home to their parents and grandparents? For the teenagers, it's a bit more clear cut. We can have distance in the sense of desks and large classrooms, and they can be relied upon to self-manage. But for young children, I'm still unclear what the appropriate path will be. Hopefully, technology can help us. Hopefully, there'll be some prophylaxis treatments coming down the pipeline soon. But absent that, I'm a little perplexed.
Here in Ottawa, we're hearing about from City Council, the Mayor, and Keith Eglite, Chair of the Health Committee, that Public Health, there we go, that mandatory masks is coming soon. It sounds like maybe as early as Monday with an order. Is that going to help for reopening of Stage 3? Is that necessary? Should it have happened sooner? And I should point out, that's for the use of a mask in a public area. Indoor public space. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Masks are mandatory. They have to work. Masks are a key component to all of this. Absent a vaccine, I feel that masks are our best tool to prevent a second wave. Now, if you think about building defenses against an invading army, we can put up walls, we can put up battlements, we can dig a moat. We need all of those things to keep the entire army out. Similarly, with this virus, distancing is appropriate, hand hygiene is appropriate, washing your hands is good, but we need all of that plus the mask to give a full and thorough protection for everybody around us. The data is becoming very clear now. Societies and populations that adopt widespread mask usage early on have a lesser bad experience with this disease. It's as simple as that. In addition, the citizens can be a partner in helping each other out. Up to now, it's been largely in the hands of government and scientists and doctors to protect everybody else. Now the burden switches to the commonplace people, to everyone else. We wear masks to protect each other. And it's a low risk, low technology, low cost investment that could potentially have enormous rewards. I can't say any better than that. I mean, the potential for mask wearing to really keep this thing at bay is phenomenal, as we're now learning. And it doesn't even have to be perfect masks or a perfectly worn mask. It can just be somehow covering your nose and your mouth for most of the time when you're indoors will reap remarkable dividends down the road.
What's it like for you when you're walking around in these indoor public spaces and seeing people with masks? Are there things you're seeing people doing you want to say, no, don't do quite that or that mask, or are you just happy to see them wearing something?
Yeah. Okay, that's good question. So I think early on in the pandemic, we were obsessed with appropriate mask usage, which really sent the wrong message. Masks are not PPE. They're not personal protective equipment. They're not, to be used to protect yourself, and proper mask discipline isn't that important. You're not going to cross-contaminate areas because the disease is pretty rare right now. All a mask is, for most people, is a windbreak to prevent the respiratory drops from getting a little further past your face than would have otherwise. As simple as that, right? So it doesn't really matter if you slip up here and there. All it matters is that you wear it most of the time. What really amuses me is when I see people walking alone through the park wearing a mask, and then they get home and they take off their mask at their front door and have a chat with their neighbor. That's the exact opposite of what needs to happen. When you're out alone in the open, you're fine. You don't need a mask. It's when you're engaging with other people in close proximity, that's when a mask is needed. So I think some people have got into their heads that the virus is all around us and you wear a mask to protect yourself. That's not the case. You wear a mask to protect other people when you're interacting with them intimately. So we've sort of failed in the messaging there, and we have to double down on how we get that science across to people for this to really work.
Right. It's all about not speaking moistly.
Yeah.
It seems like so long ago. It seems like ages ago. Raywat,
it really does. It really does. I mean,
yeah. Raywat, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Have yourself a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist and associate professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Ottawa.